All right, we are a little past 8. I got waylaid by the neighbors, and as I was coming in, and you can never just say no, can you? So, let's go ahead and settle in, get comfortable, grab a drink, and let's get started. Welcome back. This is our 6th night of reading from John Milton's Paradise Lost. Last time we saw the temptation. We saw the original sin. We saw the fruit and the awakening of knowledge of good and evil in Adam and Eve. And tonight, I expect we'll see some villainous gloating from the great antagonist. And yes, very Midwestern. I live in a neighborhood with a bunch of retirees, shall we say. So as I wander in home from wherever I've been, they're sitting out on the front porch and having a bit of a yap. I mean, you have to stop and say hi. You have to. It'd be rude otherwise, right? You can't be rude to the neighbors. That's unthinkable, unconscionable even. So here we are. They're very nice people, but man, oh man, I could learn a thing or two about yapping. That is for certain. All right, so tonight we've got a short reading, short-ish. This one is about 26 pages, which is just a touch shorter than last night. But we do only have 3 chapters remaining, and the last 2 are a little bit shorter. So we will be going about our business tonight with a little bit less full usage of time, and tomorrow will be maybe a little bit longer, but we will be finishing Paradise Lost this weekend. And so, we do need to start thinking about what comes next. We've got a reading coming on Tuesday with a new project, and we will be about, a little bit more than a week into September. So we can start thinking about something fall-ish. And then we've got big plans for late September and into October, so we don't need to get into anything too big. Maybe it'll be time to revisit some things that we've left partway through. I know we've got the other parts of Alice in Wonderland. We've got what? Excuse me? Stream Elements? This is new. I don't recall signing up for the Stream Elements bot. Interesting. That's a little bit odd. I know I did Stream Elements for my overlay, but let's take a look-see here. Curiouser and curiouser. They've already signed in. There. I think that for now, let's just plan this as homework for me to finish to look into this, because this is a wee bit strange. They've changed things since I was last logged in here too. Yeah, well, I'll look at this tonight after we're finished. Unless it gets a little disruptive. We'll see if it's going to be yappy on us. Anyway, so we are coming up on the end of Paradise Lost. We've got 2 nights left, a short reading tonight, and a longer reading tomorrow. And we left off last time after the original sin, after the fall from grace. And now, let's go ahead and jump into things from the perspective sinister. And I felt tonight, given the context, a nice dark red was perfect accompaniment for this reading. So, let's jump back into things now with Book 10 of Paradise Lost. Meanwhile, the heinous and despiteful act of Satan done in paradise, and how he, in the serpent, had perverted Eve, her husband, she, to taste the fatal fruit, was known in heaven. For what can scape the eye of God all-seeing, or deceive his heart omniscient, who, in all things wise and just, hindered not Satan to attempt the mind of man, with strength entire and free will armed, complete to have discovered and repulsed whatever wiles of foe or seeming friend. For still they knew, and ought to have still remembered, the high injunction not to taste that fruit, whoever tempted, which they not obeying, incurred, what could they less, the penalty. And, manifold in sin, deserved to fall. Up into heaven, from paradise in haste, the angelic guards ascended, mute and sad. For man, for of his state by this they knew, much wondering how the subtle fiend had stolen entrance unseen. Soon, as the unwelcome news from earth arrived at heaven gate, displeased all were who heard. Dim sadness did not spare that time's celestial visages. Yet, mixed with pity, violated not their bliss. About the new arrived, in multitudes, the ethereal people ran, to hear and know how all befell. They, towards the throne supreme, accountable, made haste to make appear, with righteous plea, their utmost vigilance, and easily approved, when the Most High Eternal Father, from his secret cloud, amidst in thunder, uttered thus his voice: "Assembled angels, and ye powers returned from unsuccessful charge, be not dismayed, nor troubled at these tidings from the earth, which your sincerest care could not prevent. Foretold so lately what would come to pass, when first this tempter crossed the gulf from hell. I told ye then he should prevail, and speed on his bad errand. Man should be seduced and flattered out of all believing lies against his Maker, no decree of mine concurring to necessitate his fall, or touch, with lightest moment of impulse, his free will, to her own inclining left in even scale. But fallen he is, and now what rests, but that the mortal sentence pass on his transgression? Death denounced that day, which he presumes already vain and void, because not yet inflicted, as he feared, by some immediate stroke, but soon shall find forbearance no acquittance, ere day end. Justice shall not return as bounty scorned, but whom send I to judge them? Whom but thee, vicegerent's son? To thee I have transferred all judgment, whether in heaven, or earth, or hell. Easy it may be seen that I intend mercy colleague with justice, sending thee, man's friend, his mediator, his designed both ransom and redeemer voluntary, and destined man himself to judge man fallen. So spake the Father, and unfolding bright toward the right hand his glory on the sun blazed forth unclouded deity. He, full resplendent, all his Father manifest expressed, and thus divinely answered mild. Eternal Father eternal, thine is to decree, mine both in heaven and earth, to do thy will supreme, that thou in me, thy Son beloved, mayest ever rest well pleased. I go to judge on earth these thy transgressors. But thou knowest, whoever judged, the worst on me must light. When time shall be, for so I undertook before thee, and, not repenting, this obtain of right, that I may mitigate their doom, on me derived. Yet I shall temper so justice with mercy, as may illustrate most them fully satisfied, and thee appease. Attendants none shall need, nor train, where none are to behold the judgment, but the judged. Those two, the third best absent is condemned. Convict by flight, and rebel to all law. Conviction to the serpent none belongs. Thus saying, from his radiant seat he rose, of high collateral glory, him thrones and powers, princedoms and dominations ministrant, accompanied to heaven gate, from whence Eden and all the coast in prospect lay. Down he descended straight, the speed of gods time counts not, though with swiftest minutes winged. Now was the sun in western cadence low, from noon and gentle airs due at their hour, to fan the earth now waked, and usher in the evening cool, when he, from wrath more cool, came the mild judge and intercessor both, to sentence man. The voice of God they heard, now walking in the garden, by soft winds, brought to their ears, while day declined. They heard, and from his presence hid themselves among the thickest trees, both man and wife. Till God, approaching thus to Adam, called aloud, Where art thou, Adam? Wont with joy to meet my coming seen far off? I miss thee here, not pleased, thus entertained with solitude, where obvious duty erewhile appeared unsought, or come I less conspicuous? Or what change absents thee, or what chance detains? Come forth! He came, and with him Eve, more loath, though first to offend, discountenanced both, and discomposed. Love was not in their looks, either to God or to each other, but apparent guilt, and shame, and perturbation, and despair, anger, and obstinacy, and hate, and guile. Whence Adam, faltering long, thus answered brief, I heard thee in the garden, and of thy voice afraid, being naked, hid myself. To whom the gracious judge without revile replied, My voice thou oft hast heard, and hast not feared, but still rejoiced. How is it now become so dreadful to thee, that thou art naked? Who hath told thee? Hast thou eaten of the tree, whereof I gave thee charge thou shouldst not eat? To whom thus Adam, sore beset, replied, "O heaven! In evil strait this day I stand before my judge, either to undergo myself the total crime, or to accuse my other self, the partner of my life, whose failing, while her faith to me remains, I should conceal, and not expose to blame, but my complaint. But strict necessity subdues me, and calamitous constraint, lest on my head both sin and punishment, however insupportable, be all devolved. Though, should I hold my peace, yet thou wouldst easily detect what I conceal. This woman, whom thou madest to be my help, and gavest me as thy perfect gift, so good, so fit, so acceptable, so divine, that from her hand I could suspect no ill. And what she did, whatever in itself, her doing seemed to justify the deed. She gave me of the tree, and I did eat." To whom the sovereign presence thus replied, "Was she thy God, that her thou didst obey before his voice? Or was she made thy guide, superior, or but equal, that to her thou didst resign thy manhood, and the place wherein God set thee above her made of thee? And for thee, whose perfection far excelled hers in all real dignity, adorned she was indeed, and lovely, to attract thy love, not thy subjection, and her gifts were such as under government well seemed unseemly to bear rule, which was thy part and person, hadst thou known thyself aright." So having said, he thus to Eve in few, "Say, woman, what is this which thou hast done?" To whom sad Eve, with shame nigh overwhelmed, confessing soon, yet not before her judge bold or loquacious, thus abashed replied, "The serpent me beguiled, and I did eat. Which when the Lord God heard, without delay to judgment he proceeded on the accused serpent, though brute, unable to transfer the guilt on him, who made him instrument of mischief, and polluted from the end of his creation justly then accursed, as vitiated in nature, more to know concerned not man, since he no further knew, nor altered his offense. Yet God at last to Satan first in sin his doom applied, though in mysterious terms judged as then best. And on the serpent thus his curse let fall. Because thou hast done this, thou art accursed. Above all cattle, each beast of the field, upon thy belly, groveling thou shalt go, and dust shalt eat all the days of thy life. Between thee and the woman I will put enmity, and between thine and her seed. Her seed shall bruise thy head, thou bruise his heel." So spake this oracle, then verified, when Jesus, son of Mary, second Eve, saw Satan fall like lightning down from heaven. Prince of the air, then, rising from his grave, spoiled principalities and powers, triumphed in open show, and, with ascension bright, captivity led captive through the air. The realm itself of Satan, long usurped, whom he shall tread at last under our feet, even he, who now foretold his fatal bruise, and to the woman thus his sentence turned: "Thy sorrow I will multiply greatly. By thy conception, children thou shalt bring in sorrow forth. and to thy husband's will thine shall submit. He over thee shall rule. On Adam last thus judgment he pronounced. Because thou hast hearkened to the voice of thy wife, and eaten of the tree, concerning which I charged thee, saying, Thou shalt not eat thereof. Cursed is the ground for thy sake, thou in sorrow shalt eat thereof all the days of thy life. Thorns also and thistles it shall bring thee forth unbid, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground, for thou out of the ground wast taken. Know thy birth. For dust thou art, and shalt to dust return. So judged he man, both judge and Saviour sent, and the instant stroke of death denounced that day removed far off. Then, pitying how they stood before him naked to the hair, that now must suffer change, disdained not to begin thenceforth the form of servant to assume. As when he washed his servants' feet, so now, as father of his family, he clad their nakedness with skins of beasts, or slain, or as the snake with youthful coat repaid, and thought not much to clothe his enemies. Nor he their outward only with the skins of beasts, but inward nakedness much more. Opprobrious, with his robe of righteousness arraying, covered from his father's sight. To him, with swift ascent, he up-returned, into his blissful bosom reassumed in glory as of old. To him appeased all, though all-knowing, what had passed with man recounted, mixing intercessions sweet. Meanwhile, ere thus was sinned and judged on earth, within the gates of hell sat sin and death. In counterview within the gates that now stood open wide, belching out outrageous flame far into chaos since the fiend passed through. Sin opening, who thus now to death began. O son, why sit we here each other viewing idly, while Satan, our great author, thrives in other worlds, and happier seat provides for us his offspring dear? It cannot be but that success tends him, if mishap, ere this he had returned, with fury driven by his avengers, since no place like this can fit his punishment, or their revenge. Methinks I feel new strength within me rise, wings growing, and dominion given me large beyond this deep. Whatever draws me on, or sympathy, or some connatural force, powerful at greatest distance to unite, with secret amity, things of like kind, by secretest conveyance, thou, my shade, inseparable, must with me along. For death from sin no power can separate. But lest the difficulty of passing back stay his return, perhaps over this gulf impassable, impervious, let us try adventurous work. Yet to thy power and mine, not unagreeable to found a path over this main from hell to that new world where Satan now prevails, a monument of merit high to all the infernal host, easing their passage hence, for intercourse or transmigration, as their lot shall lead. Nor can I miss the way, so strongly drawn by this new-felt attraction and instinct. Whom thus the meagre shadow answered soon, Go, whither fate and inclination strong leads thee, I shall not lag behind, nor err. The way thou leading, such a scent I draw of carnage, prey innumerable, and taste the savour of death from all things there that live. Nor shall I to the work thou enterprisest be wanting, but afford thee equal aid. So saying, with delight he snuffed the smell of mortal change on earth, as when a flock of ravenous fowl, though many a league remote, against the day of battle to a field where armies lie encamped, come flying, lured with scent of living carcasses designed for death the following day in bloody fight. So scented the grim feature, and upturned his nostril wide into the murky air, sagacious of his quarry from so far. Then both from out hell gates into the waste wide anarchy of chaos, damp and dark, flew diverse, and with power, their power was great, hovering upon the waters, what they met, solid or slimy as in raging sea, tossed up and down together, crowded drove, from each side shoaling towards the mouth of hell, as when two polar winds, blowing adverse upon the Cronian sea, together drive mountains of ice, that stop the imagined way beyond Petsora eastward, to the rich Cathayan coast. The aggregated soil, death with his mace petrific, cold and dry, as with a trident smote, and fixed as firm as Delos, floating once. The rest his look, bound with Gorgonian rigor not to move, as with asphaltic slime, broad as the gate, deep to the roots of hell the gathered beach. They fastened, and the mole immense, hello Zoe, wrought on over the foaming deep, high-arched, a bridge of length prodigious, joining to the wall immovable of this now fenceless world. Forfeit to death, from hence a passage broad, smooth, easy, inoffensive, down to hell. So, if great things to small may be compared, Xerxes, the liberty of Greece to yoke, from Susa, his Memnonian palace high, came to the sea, and over Hellespont bridging his way, Europe with Asia joined, and scourged with many a stroke the indignant waves. Now had they brought the work by wondrous art pontifical, a ridge of pendant rock, over the vexed abyss, following the track of Satan, to the self-same place where he first lighted from his wing and landed safe from out of chaos, to the outside bare of this round world, with pins of adamant and chains they made all fast, too fast they made, and durable. And now, in little space, the confines met of empyrean heaven, and of this world, and on the left hand hell, with long reach interposed, three several ways in sight. To each of these three places led. And now, their way to earth they had descried, to paradise first tending, when behold, Satan, in likeness of an angel bright, betwixt the centaur and the scorpion steering his zenith, while the sun in Aries rose, disguised he came. But those his children dear, their parents soon discerned, though in disguise. He, after Eve seduced, unminded slunk into the wood fast by, and changing shape to observe the sequel, saw his guileful act by Eve, though all unweeting, seconded upon her husband, saw their shame that sought vain covertures, But when he saw descend the Son of God to judge them, terrified, he fled, not hoping to escape, but shun the present, fearing, guilty, what his wrath might suddenly inflict. That passed, returned by night, listening where the hapless pair sat in their sad discourse and various plaint. Thence gathered his own doom, which understood not instant, but of future time. With joy and tidings fraught, to hell he now returned. And at the brink of chaos, near the foot of this new wondrous pontifice, unhoped, met, who to meet him came, his offspring dear. Great joy was at their meeting, and at sight of that stupendous bridge his joy increased. Long he admiring stood, till Sin, his fair enchanting daughter, thus the silence broke. O parent, these are thy magnificent deeds, thy trophies, which thou viewest as not thine own. Thou art their author and prime architect. For I no sooner in my heart divined my heart, which by a secret harmony still moves with thine, joined in connection sweet, that thou on earth hadst prospered, which thy looks now also evidence. But straight I felt, thou, distant from thee worlds between, yet felt, I must after thee. With this thy son, such fatal consequence unites us three. Hell could no longer hold us in our bounds, nor this unvoyageable gulf obscure detain from following thy illustrious track. Thou hast achieved our liberty, confined within hell gates till now, thou us empowered to fortify thus far and overlay with this portentous bridge the dark abyss. Thine now is all this world, thy virtue hath won what thy hands builded not. Thy wisdom gained with odds what war hath lost, and fully avenged our foil in heaven. Here thou shalt monarch reign. There didst not, there let him still victor sway, as battle hath adjudged, from this new world retiring, by his own doom alienated. And henceforth monarchy with thee divide, of all things parted by the imperial bounds. His quadrature from thy orbicular world, or try thee now, more dangerous, to his throne. Whom thus the Prince of Darkness answered glad, Fair daughter, and thou son and grandchild both, I proof ye now have given to be the race of Satan, for I glory in the name, antagonist of heaven's almighty King. Amply have merited of me, and all, of all, the infernal empire that so near heaven's door, triumphal with triumphal act have met, mine with this glorious work, and made one realm, hell and this world, one realm, one continent of easy thoroughfare. Therefore, while I descend through darkness on your road with ease, to my associate powers, them to acquaint with these successes, and with them rejoice. You too this way, among these numerous orbs, all yours, right down to paradise descend, there dwell, and reign in bliss. Thence on the earth dominion exercise, and in the air chiefly on man, sole lord of all declared, him first make sure your thrall, and lastly kill. my substitutes I send ye, and create plenipotent on earth, of matchless might issuing from me. On your joint vigor now my hold of this new kingdom all depends. Through sin to death exposed by my exploit, if your joint power prevail, the affairs of hell no detriment need fear. Go, and be strong. So saying, he dismissed them. They with speed their course through thickest constellations held. Spreading their bane, the blasted stars looked wan, and planets struck real eclipse, then suffered. But the other way Satan went down, the causey to hell gate. On either side disparted chaos overbuilt exclaimed, and with rebounding surge the bars assailed, that scorned his indignation. Through the gate, wide open and unguarded, Satan passed, and all about found desolate, for those appointed to sit there had left their charge, flown to the upper world. The rest were all far to the inland retired, about the walls of Pandemonium city and proud seat of Lucifer, so by illusion called. Of that bright star to Satan paragoned. There watched the legions, while the grand in council sat, solicitous what chance might intercept their emperor sent. So he, departing, gave command, and they observed, as when the Tartar from his Russian foe by Astrakhan over the snowy plains retires, or Bactrian Sophie from the horns of Turkish crescent leaves all waste beyond the realm of Aladul in his retreat, or Taurus to Casbin, so these, the late heaven-banished host, left desart utmost hell many a dark league, reduced in careful watch round their metropolis. And now expecting each hour their great adventurer, from the search of foreign worlds, he, through the midst unmarked, in show plebeian angel militant of lowest order passed, and from the door of that Plutonian hall, invisible, ascended his high throne, which, under state of richest texture spread, at the upper end was placed in regal lustre. Down a while he sat, and round him saw unseen. At last, as from a cloud his fulgent head and shape star-bright appeared, or brighter, clad with that permissive glory since his fall was left him, or false glitter. All amazed at that so sudden blaze, the Stygian throng bent their aspect, and whom they wished beheld. Their mighty chief returned, loud was the acclaim, forth rushed in haste the great consulting peers, raised from their dark divan, and with like joy congratulate approached him, who with hand silence, and with these words attention won: thrones, dominations, princedoms, virtues, powers, for in possessions such, not only of right, I call ye, and declare ye now returned, successful beyond hope, to lead ye forth triumphant out of this infernal pit abominable, accursed the house of woe, and dungeon of our tyrant, now possess as lords a spacious world, to our native heaven little inferior, by my adventure hard with peril great achieved. Long were to tell what I have done, what suffered, with what pain voyaged the unreal, vast, unbounded deep of horrible confusion, over which, by sin and death, a broad way now is paved, to expedite your glorious march. But I, toiled out my uncouth passage, forced to ride the untractable abyss, plunged in the womb of unoriginal night and chaos wild, that, jealous of their secrets, fiercely opposed my journey strange with clamorous uproar, protesting fate supreme. Thence how I found the new created world, which fame in heaven long had foretold, a fabric wonderful, of absolute perfection. Therein man, placed in a paradise by our exile made happy, him by fraud I have seduced from his creator, and, the more to increase your wonder, with an apple he thereat offended, worth your laughter, hath given up both his beloved man and all his world, to sin and death a prey, and so to us, without our hazard, labor, or alarm, to range in, and to dwell, and over man to rule, as over all he should have ruled. True is, me also he hath judged, or rather, me not, but the brute serpent in whose shape man I deceived. That which to me belongs is enmity, which he will put between me and mankind. I am to bruise his heel, his seed, when is not set, shall bruise my head. A world who would not purchase with a bruise, or much more grievous pain. Ye have the account of my performance. What remains, ye gods, but up, and enter now into full bliss. So having said, a while he stood, expecting their universal shout and high applause to fill his ear, when contrary, he hears on all sides, from innumerable tongues, a dismal, universal hiss, the sound of public scorn. He wondered, but not long, had leisure, wondering himself now more. His visage drawn, he felt to sharp and spare. His arms clung to his ribs, his legs entwining each other still, till supplanted down he fell, a monstrous serpent on his belly prone. Reluctant, but in vain, a greater power now ruled him, punished in the shape he sinned. According to his doom, he would have spoke, but hiss for hiss returned with forked tongue to forked tongue, for now were all transformed, alike to serpents all, as accessories to his bold riot. Dreadful was the din of hissing through the hall, thick swarming now with complicated monsters, head and tail, scorpion and asp, and amphis bane a dire, Cerastes horned, Hydrus and Elops drear, and Dipsus, not so thick swarmed, once the soil bedropped with blood of Gorgon, or the isle Ophiusa. But still greatest he the midst, now dragon grown, larger than whom the sun engendered in the Pythian veil or slime, huge Python, and his power no less he seemed. Above the rest, still to retain, they all him followed, issuing forth to the open field, where all yet left of that revolted rout, heaven fallen, in station stood or just array. Sublime with expectation, when to see, in triumph issuing forth, their glorious chief, they saw but other sight instead. A crowd of ugly serpents, Horror on them fell, and horrid sympathy. For what they saw, they felt themselves now changing. Down their arms, down fell both spear and shield, down they as fast. And the dire hiss renewed, and the dire form, catched by contagion like in punishment, as in their crime, thus was the applause they meant, turned to exploding hiss, triumph to shame. Cast on themselves from their own mouths, there stood a grove hard by, sprung up with this their change. His will who reigns above to aggravate their penance, laden with fair fruit, like that which grew in paradise, the bait of Eve, used by the tempter. On that prospect strange, their earnest eyes they fixed, imagining, for one forbidden tree, a multitude now risen to work them further woe or shame. Yet parched with scalding thirst and hunger fierce, though to delude them sent, could not abstain. But on they rolled in heaps, up and up, the trees climbing, sat thicker than the snaky locks that curled Megara. Greedily they plucked the fruitage fair to sight, like that which grew near the bituminous lake where Sodom flamed. This more delusive, not the touch, but taste. Deceived they fondly, thinking to allay their appetite with gust, instead of fruit, chewed bitter ashes, which the offended taste with spattering noise rejected. Oft they essayed, hunger and thirst constraining, drugged as oft with hatefullest disrelish, writhed their jaws, with soot and cinders filled. So oft they fell into the same illusion, not as man whom they triumphed once lapsed. Thus were they plagued and worn with famine, long and ceaseless hiss, till their lost shape permitted, they resumed. Yearly enjoined, some say, to undergo this annual humbling, certain numbered days, to dash their pride and joy from man seduced. However, some tradition they dispersed among the heathen of their purchase got, and fabled how the serpent, whom they called Ophion, with Eurynome the wide, encroaching Eve, perhaps, had first the rule of high Olympus, thence by Saturn driven, and Ops, ere yet Dictaean Jove was born. Alright. That is about, we're a little bit past the halfway point there. So let's go ahead and force a little bit of an early break. Stretch this out just a little bit. So now is a great time to top up your drinks, wet your whistle, and I'm going to take a quick look at Stream Elements while we're on a short break and see if I can suss out what they just did. Anyway, we'll be back in just a bit. All right, we are back. And I think I've sorted it out. I think it was just a matter of the bot decided that it wanted to make sure that it was known. I think I've got all of the commands disabled on the bot, and all of the filters disabled on the bot, but it's an integration. It's how I have our chat on screen, and that's really about all that matters at this point. So, not anything to worry about with Stream Elements. It's not getting up to any shenanigans. It's just reminding us that it's there. And actually, honestly, that's all I need from Stream Elements, really, is just to get the chat on the screen. The more odds and ends and special bits and bobs are interesting and all, but really not necessary for what we do. You can make do with just simple clip art and OBS text elements for most of what I do. So, it works. Maybe someday we'll get fancy and do something funny, but that's not really strictly necessary, and that sounds like a lot of work. And I'm not about to commission someone to do that. Yeah. I had to futz with that a little bit today. Had to change. There's something with my headset that I use for monitor. I'm glad I don't use the headset for the microphone anymore. But there's something I have to reassociate the headset with the device. It shows up as a second device or something. Phantom device whenever Windows updates. So it's lovely, lovely fun. But got that reassociated this morning, or this evening, and a quick restart of OBS, and we were off to the races. So I've learned the quirks over the it's been what, almost 9 months now that we've been going. So it's nice. Are you switching to Linux or something, or a Mac or something? Getting away from Windows? At this point, I can't hardly imagine not having a Windows computer, just because it's so easy. But it is much easier these days for Linux to work. Used to be, it was, if you wanted to use any programs, you had to have Windows. But nowadays, there's Linux support for a lot of things. Just find a distro that is your specific flavor you like, and there's a very real chance that most of what you do is going to be supported. And on the nice side, you can do a lot of cool things with Linux, running headless servers and things like that you can't do in other platforms. So, it's all good. Yeah. One thing you may look, that's what I was able to upgrade one of my older computers to 11 when it was originally not showing as compatible. It usually is just a TPM module, and most motherboards that have been made at all recently have a TPM module, but it's disabled by default. So you need to go into the BIOS and re-enable that. And that's all I had to do, and I was able to get my old home server compatible with Windows 11. So it's worth looking into. But that said, if you're using that as an opportunity to make the jump to Linux, and if you're comfortable with the limitations that involves with compatibilities and whatnot, more power to you. Go for it. It's easier. It's a little bit more hands-on upkeep, but it's not going to pull compatibility from you on anything, or it's not going to do anything that you don't want it to. So the nice thing about Linux is it does exactly what you want it to and nothing else. I will say that the 10 to 11, there's not nearly as much, it's not as bad as people make it out to be. Really, it feels exactly like 10 used to feel. The only thing that I will legitimately say is worse is the right-click context menu. I don't like how they've hidden things and added submenus and such like that. That is the one part of Windows 11 that is noticeably different. Everything else, it was the same bloat that was in 10. It's the same nonsense. There's not new stuff. It's just that right click. You know what? Windows 95 has a special spot in my heart. That's the first computer I built, the first one I ran, and it was glorious. And then 98 came along, and it was okay, but then everyone skipped 2000 and ME. Let's be real. Those shouldn't exist. They were a blight upon the landscape. But XP was very good for a very long time. I still have a laptop that runs XP. I make sure that it's not on the internet every time I go in, but I still have one. ME was so bad. Like, I can't imagine what they thought, like how they thought that was going to work. Even Vista was better. And Vista was pretty bad. Alright, that's enough old IT folk grumbling. Let's get back to it, because we do have about half of the chapter left. And I think we're shifting away from the hell perspective and moving back into what's happening on the earth. But I will make a quick comment. This is the very epitome of their success turning to ashes in their mouth. The Satan returning triumphant and falling to the same curse that was given to the serpent. Like, okay, that's a little bit of comeuppance. Fair enough, Milton. You can't have the forces of evil coming through triumphant and not having any consequences. That's a very good way to find yourself the subject to an inquisition. All right. So, continuing where we left off, partway through Book 10 of Paradise Lost. Meanwhile, in paradise, the hellish pair too soon arrived. Sin, there in power before, once actual, now in body, and to dwell habitual habitant. Behind her, death, close following, pace for pace, not mounted yet on his pale horse, to whom sin thus began. Second of Satan sprung, all-conquering death. What thinkest thou of our... what thinkest thou of our empire now, though earned with travel difficult? Not better far than still at hell's dark threshold to have sat watch, unnamed, undreaded, and thyself half-starved. Whom thus the sin-born monster answered soon, to me, who, with eternal famine pine, alike is hell, or paradise, or heaven. There best, where most with ravin I may meet, which here, though plenteous, all too little seems to stuff this maw, this vast, unhide-bound core, to whom the incestuous mother thus replied, Thou therefore on these herbs and fruits and flowers feed first, on each beast next, and fish and fowl. No homely morsels, and whatever thing the scythe of time mows down, devour unspared. Till I, in man residing, through the race, his thoughts, his looks, words, actions all infect, and season him thy last and sweetest prey. This said, They both betook them several ways, both to destroy or unimmortal make all kinds, and for destruction to mature sooner or later, which the Almighty seeing, from his transcendent seat, the saints among to those bright orders uttered thus his voice, See, with what heat these dogs of hell advance, to waste and havoc yonder world which I so fair and good created, and had still kept in that state, had not the folly of man let in these wasteful furies, whose impute folly to me, so doth the Prince of Hell and his adherents, that with so much ease I suffer them to enter and possess a place so heavenly, and, conniving, seem to gratify my scornful enemies, that laugh as if transported with some fit of passion. I to them had quitted all, at random yielded up to their misrule, and know not that I called and drew them thither, my hellhounds, to lick up the draught and filth which man's polluting sin with taint hath shed on what was pure, till, crammed and gorged, nigh burst with sucked and glutted offal, at one sling of thy victorious arm, well-pleasing Son, both sin and death and yawning grave at last, through chaos hurled, obstruct the mouth of hell forever, and seal up his ravenous jaws. Then heaven and earth renewed shall be made pure to sanctity, that shall receive no stain. Till then, the curse pronounced on both proceeds. He ended, and the heavenly audience loud sung Hallelujah, as the sound of seas through multitude that sung, Just are thy ways, righteous are thy decrees on all thy works. Who can extenuate thee, next to the Son, destined restorer of mankind, by whom new heaven and earth shall to the ages rise, or down from heaven descend? Such was their song, while the Creator, calling forth by name his mighty angels, gave them several charge, as sorted best with present things. The Son had first his precept so to move, so shine, his might affect the earth with cold and heat scarce tolerable, and from the north to call decrepit winter, and from the south to bring solstitial summer's heat. To the blank moon her office they prescribed, to the other 5 their planetary motions and aspects, in sextile, square, and trine, and opposite, of noxious efficacy, and when to join in synod unbenign, and taught the fixed their influence malignant, when to shower, which of them rising with the sun or falling should prove tempestuous. To the winds they set their corners, when with bluster to confound sea, air, and shore, the thunder went to roll with terror through the dark oriel hall. Some say he bid his angels turn askance the poles of earth, twice 10 degrees and more. From the sun's axle they with labor pushed oblique the centric globe. Some say the sun was bid turn reins from the equinoctial road, like distant breath to Taurus, with the 7 Atlantic sisters, and the Spartan twins up to tropic Crab. Thence down amain by Leo, and the Virgin, and the scales as deep as Capricorn, to bring in change of seasons to each clime. Else had the spring perpetual smiled on earth with verdant flowers, equal in days and nights, except to those beyond the polar circles. To them day had unbenighted shone, while the low sun, to recompense his distance, in their sight had rounded till still the horizon, and not known or east or west, which had forbid the snow from east of cold Estotiland, and south as far beneath Magellan. At that tasted fruit the sun, as from Theistian banquet turned his course intended. Else, how had the world inhabited, though sinless, more than now avoided pinching cold and scorching heat? These changes in the heavens, though slow, produced like change on sea and land, sidereal blast, vapor and mist, and exhalation hot, corrupt and pestilent, now from the north of Norumbiga and the Samoyed shore, bursting their brazen dungeon armed with ice and snow and hail and stormy gust and flaw, Boreas and Sasius and Argestes loud and Thracius rend the woods and seas upturn. With adverse blast upturns them from the south, Notus and Ephor black with thunderous clouds. From Cereliona, thwart of these as fierce, forth rush the Levant and Ponent winds, Eurus and Zephyr, with their lateral noise, Sirocco and Lebeccio, thus began outrage from lifeless things, but discord first. Daughter of sin, among the irrational death introduced through fierce antipathy. Beast now with beast can war, and fowl with fowl, and fish with fish, to graze the herb all leaving, devoured each other. Nor stood much in awe of man, but fled him, or with countenance grim glared on him passing. These were from without the growing miseries, which Adam saw already in part, though hid in gloomiest shade, to sorrow abandoned. But worse felt within, and in a troubled sea of passion tossed, thus to disburden sought with sad complaint, "O miserable of happy, is this the end of this new glorious world? And me so late, the glory of that glory, who now become accursed of blessed, hide me from the face of God, whom to behold was then my height of happiness. Yet well, if here would end the misery, I deserved it, and would bear my own deservings, but this will not serve. All that I eat or drink, or shall beget, is propagated curse. O voice, once heard, delightfully increase and multiply, now death to hear. For what can I increase or multiply but curses on my head? Who of all ages to succeed? But feeling the evil on him brought by me will curse my head. Ill fare our ancestor impure. For this we may thank Adam, but his thanks shall be the execration. So besides mine own that bide upon me, all from me, shall with a fierce reflux on me rebound. On me, as on their natural centre, light, heavy, though in their place, O fleeting joys of paradise, dear bought with lasting woes. Did I request thee, Maker, from my clay to mould me, man? Did I solicit thee from darkness to promote me, or here place in this delicious garden, as my will concurred not to my being, it were but right and equal to reduce me to my dust, desirous to resign and render back all I received, unable to perform thy terms too hard, by which I was to hold the good I sought not. To the loss of that sufficient penalty, why hast thou added the sense of endless woes? Inexplicable thy justice seems. Yet to say truth, too late I thus contest. Then should have been refused those terms, whatever, when they were proposed. Thou didst accept them. Wilt thou enjoy the good? Then cavil the conditions, and though God made thee without thy leave? What if thy son prove disobedient, and reproved retort, Wherefore didst thou beget me? I sought it not. Wouldst thou admit for this contempt of thee that proud excuse, yet him not thy election, but natural necessity begot? God made thee of choice his own, and of his own to serve him. Thy reward was of his grace. Thy punishment then justly is at his will. Be it so, for I submit his doom is fair. That dust I am, and shall to dust return. O welcome hour whenever. Why delays his hand to execute what his decree fixed on this day? Why do I overlive? Why am I mocked with death, and lengthened out to deathless pain? How gladly would I meet mortality, my sentence, and be earth insensible. How glad would lay me down, as in my mother's lap, there I should rest, and sleep secure. His dreadful voice no more would thunder in my ears. No fear of worse to me, and to my offspring, would torment me with cruel expectation. Yet one doubt pursues me still, lest all I cannot die, lest that pure breath of life, the spirit of man which God inspired, cannot together perish with this incorporeal clod. Then, in the grave, or in some other dismal place, who knows? But I shall die a living death. Oh, thought horrid if true. Yet why? It was but breath of life that sinned. What dies but what had life and sin? The body properly had neither. All of me then shall die. Let this appease the doubt, since human reach no further knows. For though the Lord of all be infinite, is his wrath also? Be it, man is not so, but mortal doomed. How can he exercise wrath without end on man whom death must end? Can he make deathless death? That were to make strange contradiction, which to God himself impossible is held, as argument of weakness, not of power, will he draw out, for anger's sake, finite to infinite. In punished man to satisfy his rigor, satisfied never? That were to extend his sentence beyond dust and nature's law, by which all causes else, according still to the reception of their matter, act, not to the extent of their own sphere, but say, that death be not one stroke, as I supposed. Bereaving sense, but endless misery from this day onward, which I feel begun both in me and without me, and so last to perpetuity. Ay me, that fear comes thundering back with dreadful revolution on my defenseless head. Both death and I am found eternal in and incorporate both. Nor I on my part single. In me all posterity stands cursed. Fair patrimony that I must leave ye sons. Oh, were I able to waste it all myself, and leave ye none. So disinherited, how would you bless me, now your curse? Ah, why should all mankind, for one man's fault, thus guiltless be condemned? Yet guiltless. But from me, what can proceed? But all corrupt, both mind and will depraved. Not to do only, to will the same with me. How can they then, acquitted, stand in sight of God? Him, after all disputes forced, I absolve all my evasions vain, and reasonings, though through mazes, lead me still. But my own conviction, first and last, on me only, as the source and spring of all corruption, all the blame lights do. So might the wrath, fond wish, couldst thou support that burden heavier than the earth to bear, than all the world much heavier, though divided, with that bad woman. Thus, what thou desirest, and what thou fearest alike, destroys all hope of refuge, and concludes thee miserable beyond all past example and future. To Satan only, like both crime and doom, O conscience! Into what abyss of fears and horrors hast thou driven me, out of which I find no way, from deep to deeper plunged? Thus Adam to himself lamented loud through the still night, not now, as ere man fell, wholesome and cool and mild, but with black air accompanied, with damps and dreadful gloom, which to his evil conscience represented all things with double terror. On the ground outstretched he lay, on the cold ground, and oft cursed his creation, death as oft accused of tardy execution, since denounced the day of his offense. Why comes not death, said he, with one thrice acceptable stroke to end me? Shall truth fail to keep her word? Justice divine not hasten to be just? But death comes not at call. Justice divine mends not her slowest pace for prayers or cries. O woods, O fountains, hillocks, dales, and bowers, with all other echo, late I taught your shades to answer and resound far other song. Whom thus afflicted, when sad Eve beheld, desolate where she sat, approaching nigh, soft words to his fierce passion she essayed. But her with stern regard he thus repelled. Out of my sight, thou serpent! That name best befits thee with him leagued. Thyself is false and hateful, nothing wants, but that thy shape, like his, and colour serpentine, may show thy inward fraud, to warn all creatures from thee. Henceforth, lest that too heavenly form pretended to hellish falsehood snare them, but for thee I had persisted happy, had not thy pride and wandering vanity, when least was safe, rejected my forewarning and disdained, not to be trusted, longing to be seen, though by the devil himself, him overweening to overreach. But with the serpent meeting, fooled and beguiled by him, thou, I by thee, I trust thee, from my side imagined wise, constant, mature, proof against all assaults, and understood not all was but a show, rather than a solid virtue, all but a rib, crooked by nature bent, as now appears, more to the part sinister from me drawn. Well, if thrown out as supernumerary to my just number found, oh, why did God, Creator wise, that peopled highest heaven with spirits masculine, create at last this novelty on earth, this fair defect of nature, and not fill the world at once with men as angels without feminine, or find some other way to generate mankind? This mischief had not been befallen, and more that shall befall, innumerable disturbances on earth, though through female snares, in straight conjunction with this sex, for either he shall find out fit mate, but such as some misfortune brings him, or mistake, or whom he wishes most shall seldom gain through her perverseness, but shall see her gained by a far worse. Or if she love, withheld by parents, or his happiest choice too late, shall meet, already linked in wedlock, bound to a fell adversary, his hate or shame, which infinite calamity shall cause to human life, and household peace confound. Okay, so, before we continue, wow! Wow, okay. Yeah, Adam's grieving. Yeah, Milton is letting some of his own thoughts shine through. Wow, though. Calm down, my man. Brother, chill. Chill. Yeah, the very first podcast, bro. Ay, ay, ay. That was a lot. All right. He added not, and from her turned. But Eve, not so repulsed, with tears that ceased not flowing, and tresses all disordered at his feet, fell humble, and, embracing them, besought his peace, and thus proceeded in her plaint. Forsake me not thus, Adam. Witness heaven what love sincere and reverence in my heart. I bear thee, and unweeting have offended, unhappily deceived thy suppliant. I beg, and clasp thy knees, bereave me not. Whereon I lived, thy gentle looks, thy aid, thy counsel in this uttermost distress. My only strength and stay, forlorn of thee, whither shall I betake me? Where subsist? While yet we live, scarce one short hour perhaps between us two, let there be peace, both joining, as joined in injuries, one enmity, against a foe by doom express assigned us. That cruel serpent, on me exercise not thy hatred for this misery befallen, on me already lost, me than myself more miserable. Both have sinned, but thou against God only, I against God and thee, and to the place of judgment will return. There with my cries importune heaven, that all the sentence from thy head removed may light on me, sole cause to thee of all this woe, me only, just object of his ire. She ended weeping, and her lowly plight immovable, till peace obtained from fault, acknowledged and deplored, in Adam wrought commiseration. Soon his heart relented towards her, his life so late and sole delight. Now at his feet submissive and in distress, creature so fair, his reconcilement seeking, his counsel, whom she had displeased, his aid, as one disarmed, his anger all he lost. And thus with peaceful words upraised her soon, unwary and too desirous as before, so now of what thou knowest not, who desirest the punishment all on thyself. Alas! Bear thine own first, ill able to sustain his full wrath, those whose thou feelest as yet least part, and my displeasure bearest so ill. If prayers could alter high decrees, I to that place would speed before thee, and be louder heard, and on my head all might be visited, thy frailty and infirmer sex forgiven. Alright, yeah, calm down, bro. To me committed, and by me exposed. But rise, let us no more contend, nor blame each other, blamed enough elsewhere, but strive in offices of love, how we may lighten each other's burden, and our share of woe. Since this day's death denounced, if aught I see will prove no sudden, but a slow-paced evil, a long day's dying, to augment our pain, and to our seed, O hapless seed, derived. To whom thus Eve, recovering heart, replied, Adam, by sad experiment I know how little weight my words with thee could find, found so erroneous, thence by just event found so unfortunate. Nevertheless, restored by thee, vile as I am, to place of new acceptance, hopeful to regain thy love, the sole contentment of my heart. Living or dying, from thee I will not hide what thoughts in my unquiet breast are risen, tending to some relief of our extremes or end. though sharp and sad, yet tolerable, as in our evils, and of easier choice. If care of our descent perplex us most, which must be born to certain woe, devoured by death at last, and miserable it is to be to others cause of misery, our own begotten, and of our loins to bring into this cursed world a woeful race, that after wretched life must be at last food for so foul a monster. In thy power it lies, yet ere conception, to prevent the race unblessed to being yet unbegot. Childless thou art, childless remain. So death shall be deceived his glut, and with us too be forced to satisfy his ravenous maw. But if thou judge it hard and difficult, conversing, looking, loving to abstain from love's due rites, nuptial embraces sweet, and with desire to languish without hope, before the present object languishing with like desire, which would be misery and torment less than none of what we dread, then both ourselves and seed at once to free from what we fear for both, let us make short, let us seek death, or, he not found, supply with our own hands his office on ourselves. Why stand we longer shivering under fears that show no end but death, and have the power of many ways to die the shortest choosing, destruction with destruction to destroy? She ended here, or vehement despair broke off the rest. So much of death her thoughts had entertained, as dyed her cheeks with pale. But Adam, with such counsel nothing swayed. To better hopes his more attentive mind laboring had raised, and thus to Eve replied, Eve, thy contempt of life and pleasure seems to argue in thee something more sublime and excellent than what thy mind contemns. But self-destruction therefore sought refutes that excellence thought in thee, and implies not thy contempt, but anguish and regret for loss of life and pleasure overloved. Or if thou covet death as utmost end of misery, so thinking to evade the penalty pronounced, doubt not but God hath wiselier armed his vengeful ire than so to be forestalled. Much more I fear lest death, so snatched, will not exempt us from the pain we are by doom to pay. Rather, such acts of contumacy will provoke the highest to make death in us live. Then let us seek some safer resolution, which methinks I have in view, calling to mind with heed part of our sentence, that thy seed shall bruise the serpent's head, piteous amends, unless be meant, whom I conjecture, our grand foe, Satan, who in the serpent hath contrived against us this deceit, to crush his head, would be revenge indeed, which will be lost by death brought on ourselves, or childless days resolved, as thou proposest, so our foe shall scape his punishment ordained, and we instead shall double ours upon our heads. No more be mentioned than of violence against ourselves, and wilful barrenness, that cuts us off from hope, and savours only rancor and pride, impatience and despot, reluctance against God and his just yoke, laid on our necks. Remember with what mild and gracious temper he both heard and judged. Without wrath or reviling, we expected immediate dissolution, which we thought was meant by death that day, when lo, to see pains only in childbearing were foretold, and bringing forth soon recompensed with joy. Fruit of thy womb, on me the curse aslope glanced on the ground. With labor I must earn my bread. What harm? Idleness had been worse. My labor will sustain me, and, lest cold or heat should injure us, his timely care hath unbesought provided, and his hands clothed us unworthy, pitying while he judged. How much more If we pray him, will his ear be open, and his heart to pity incline? And teach us, further, by what means to shun the inclement seasons, rain, ice, hail, and snow, which now the sky, with various face, begins to show us in this mountain, while the winds blow moist and keen, shattering the graceful locks of these fair-spreading trees, which bids us seek some better shroud, some better warmth, to cherish our limbs benumbed, ere this diurnal star leave cold the night. How we, his gathered beams reflected, may with matter sair foment, or by collision of two bodies grind the air attrite to fire, as late the clouds justling or pushed with winds rude in their shock. Tine the slant lightning, whose thwart flame driven down kindles the gummy bark of fir or pine, and sends a comfortable heat from far, which might supply the sun such fire to use, and what may else be remedy or cure to evils which our own misdeeds have wrought. He will instruct us praying, and of grace beseeching him, so as we need not fear to pass commodiously this life, sustained by him with many comforts, till we end in dust, final rest, and native home. What better can we do then? To the place repairing where he judged us, prostrate fall before him reverent, and there confess humbly our faults, and pardon beg with tears watering the ground, and with our sighs the air frequenting, sent from hearts contrite, in sign of sorrow unfeigned, and humiliation meek. Undoubtedly he will relent, and turn from his displeasure, in whose look serene, when angry most he seemed, and most severe, what else but favor, grace, and mercy shown? So spake our father penitent, nor Eve felt less remorse. They forthwith to the place repairing where he judged them, prostrate fell, before him reverent, and both confessed humbly their faults, and pardon begged, with tears watering the ground. And with their sighs, the air frequenting, sent from hearts contrite, in sign of sorrow unfeigned, and humiliation meek. That brings us to the end of Book 10 of Paradise Lost. We have before us 2 books remaining, Book 11, which is about 21 pages, and Book 12, which is about 15. So we've got a bit of a long read ahead of us tomorrow, but I think, judging from what we were doing earlier on in our readings, if I not rush it, but don't take my time on some of it, and take I've got Monday to recover. We should be able to power through and get, if not on time, very close to time tomorrow, to be able to finish this up. We won't have a whole lot of time to talk about it, but that's what Tuesday's for, right? We can yap a little bit before we start our next project, or during, or after, or wherever the case may be. But yeah, so we've seen the results of the sin. The wages of sin are paid in death, as they say. And we've seen what happens. They've fucked around and now they've found out. No instant death to be their fate. No. A long and trying death after many years of labors. And let us remember that this is Old Testament God we're talking about. So they may be begging for forgiveness and pardon, but Old Testament God was not big on mercy. Not big on a lot of the niceties of what we currently perceive as the good virtues. So we'll see if or how there will be any sort of response tomorrow. Now, if I remember right, I want to say that originally Paradise Lost only had 10 chapters. And I think it was further expanded out to 12. I thought I saw that, but I'm gonna have to look this up now that I'm thinking about it. Yeah, okay, so it was first written in 1667 with 10 books, over 10,000 lines of verse. Wow, we got through 10,000 lines of verse in the first 10 books. Okay, respect. And the revised edition was in 1674, so a few years later. And that so it reorganized it into 12 books. So I don't think there was extra in these last two books, but I think some of them were longer. Okay, I'm rather glad for the revision then, because even if it's not, if the original was complete but was edited to be a little bit friendlier, I'm okay with that. Yeah, because honestly, until this weekend, when we were trying to get down to the wire and parse things out, this has been a very friendly book to us to read, like, for the formatting. It's dense, but even though it's dense, the way the books have been broken up, it fit very neatly into our book 1 break book 2 format. Some better in some ways than some other books we've read. So it's been kind of a happy accident in that case. Something about our format just works really well. It reminds me of sort of like storytelling at libraries, where you just kind of sit and read something out and then take a break for a few minutes, stretch your legs, and bring in a new storyteller. Man, that's not an idea. Maybe I should print out business cards and hand them out to libraries, let them know that we're doing this. Get some organic traffic built up. That could be fun. Yeah. Maybe down the line. Something for the future. But yeah, so we've had fun with this so far. Milton is kind of, he's got ideas. They showed especially they showed a lot in the post-sin chapters, where he's adhering to the patriarchal ideas and the supremacy of man, but also you can kind of get the idea that Adam is sort of venting, and so how much of it is meant to be taken seriously, how much is proposed as Milton's voice, how much is proposed as just the sorrow leaking out. It's hard to tell, really. And especially from the lens of a modern rereading, it's jaded a little bit, but it's not that bad. We've read worse, honestly. At least with this, I don't need to censor any of the words. I've got very few things that I will actually self-censor, and so far we haven't run into any of them here. So, and I don't expect to, so we're probably good there. Unless they start having some strange discussions about the sons of Cain. Yeah, it is interesting. It's pretty rare where you see Satan coming into either being the narrator or main character. It's particularly of the time. He was always the adversary, the enemy that was working in the shadows, or the tempter against fate. But in this, it's really cool that, like, you can see from the different perspectives. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's probably the fact that this is older than those sorts of preconceptions. The evangelical revolution sort of poisoned that well, among many other things. I have a less than charitable view of that particular shift in thought. We're feeling the repercussions of that revolution even today. I try not to judge, because everyone needs their crutch to get through the day, but it would be nice if you didn't beat someone over the head with your crutch. That'd be great, right? That's really all I ask for, is that people leave themselves, like, if you've got your own vice to get through and whatever to make your way through troubling times, just stick to yourself. Yeah, just become an alcoholic like a regular. No, don't do that. We've got our own vices. I try and keep it to just on stream. So, hopefully, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But yes, yeah, there's very much more healthy, self-destructive methods of coping and methods of adjustment than to inflict pain on others for no better reason than to make yourself feel superior. And if there's anything we take from this, it's that, you know what? Maybe Satan wasn't all wrong. And with that, we find ourselves banned by the Evangelical Society. Oh no! What will we ever do? We'll never survive. Oh no! We're going to be cancelled. Oh man, I miss Top Gear. Like, real Top Gear, you know? It's just not the same without the trio. And even Grand Tour wasn't the same. But old Top Gear was so good. It's a goldmine of things like, oh no, anyway. I used to have all of it on my Plex server. But, man, that took a lot of storage. Oh, man. But there's something about old TV that is just good. And it's timeless, too. Like, you can watch Top Gear episodes that are before you're born, if you're in the younger audience, and still understand what's going on and how they're, like, having fun with each other. And the cars themselves, they may not have been on the road for decades, but it doesn't matter. Man, I can't think of a TV dynamic that's been as good as the Top Gear trio. There is a lot that is living on my Plex server. A lot. It's how I justify, or that's how I manage to avoid a lot of the bloat of streaming services. Because, wouldn't you know it, these days, like, we all cut cable because it was getting out of hand. It was expensive. There are too many ads. We didn't want to deal with that nonsense. Now, in the days of streaming, it's every bit as bad as cable used to be, with the 20 million different options, and nowadays most of them being laden with ads and nonsense anyway. Yeah, they just reinvented it. You know, we got away from cable, so might as well bring cable to the internet. All the while raising the cost of it. And so, I have no shame in raising the black flag from time to time. Plex will take care of me. Or, in the case of others, if you're a little bit more on the open source side, Jellyfin, I hear, is fantastic. That's an alternative there. So, wink, wink. neither of them really take a whole lot of technical aptitude to stand up. You can even stand up a Plex server on your home desktop, or if you've, well, okay, this is a little outside of the super layman's terms, but you can install it on your NAS, which, yeah, that right there, just outed myself, is a little bit too far gone on the tech side. But NASs are great, good storage. They're a little too expensive for what you get for them these days, though. I think I've got a Synology that's doing good work, but one of these days I need to upgrade it and get probably a good 4 or 8 bay that will have a little bit more redundancy with disks. Storage is generally kind of cheap, but the paraphernalia involved with the storage less so. But it would be a shame for anything to happen in the library, you know? So you need to have some sort of like redundant RAID going on. Alright, guys. Let's go ahead and take this opportunity to wrap up a little bit early. We're going to have full-time / maybe a little over tonight, or tomorrow, where we will come to the end of Paradise Lost. So it's been, I've enjoyed this one as a choice, honestly. I was a little suspect. I mostly picked it up because all the references to it in other medias, between the bands who take its name or different artists who have songs that are inspired by the work or other media in general. It's been such a font of inspiration for so many. The imagination that is stirred and brought to life by the idea of the fall, the war in heaven, even the original sin and the collapse of paradise. It's so interesting. And so I felt it would be a disservice not to read the original text here like this. But it's, despite all that, like, despite having less than pure motivations for wanting to read this, it has been a fun read. It's dense, but it's a little less flowery than, like, Le Morte d'Arthur was. And it's, as will always be our refrain on this channel, which I think will probably go into eternity with this channel, it's better than Thoreau. Better than Walden. So, there's that. This has been a fun read, but we're going to be coming up on the conclusion tomorrow. And so, tonight we will be wrapping up. Have a wonderful evening. If you have not yet, I encourage you, I implore you, to drop a like on the stream, maybe a subscription to the channel. See that we're doing fun things around here. Let the algorithm know and send more people our way. And until next time, have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for joining us, as always. Good night.